When you've done a good beginning to a lesson, one in which there's a quick starter activity to engage the children, one in which learning objectives are explained, and one in which input is given so that there's plenty of material for the children to use and think about, you'll then want to move into the activity part of the lesson, the middle part. And when you're setting up activities, it's very important to explain them in detail, clearly, and also check for understanding, to check that the learners know what it is they're going to do and how they're going to do it. You'll want to explain the task to them, the input, give them some criteria for success, but you'll also want to tell them how you want them to do it. Will they do it in pairs? Will they be allowed to talk? Will they do it on their own?
Okay, so now we're going to move into the activities that I want to cover this lesson. If you remember the lesson objectives at the start, we're going to look at the poem in more detail now, and then we're going to look at starting to create your own poem towards the end of the lesson, and then we're going to carry on with that for homework. But let's just look at the poem itself now. Can you make sure it's all in front of you? And you might want to keep your pencil in hand, because some of the things I say or someone else says you might want to just make a quick note of. I'm going to ask you, again, to work in pairs. And we'll have the three here again, if that's okay. I'm going to ask you to work in pairs, and I'm going to ask you to have a deeper look now at the poem itself. I know that there were some words that we were struggling with, and we've cleared that up now. But what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to look at how Seamus Heaney is writing about life on this island. I want you to highlight or underline examples of how he is demonstrating that life on this island is not great. When there's a storm coming in, it's not nice. And you know the kinds of words we're looking for from the starter. So you can talk about it, but I want you to annotate your own copy. Okay? I want you to underline on your own copy. And in a few minutes, I'm going to ask to listen to some examples that you've found out. Okay? So just to be clear, we're looking at how Seamus Heaney is using language to demonstrate that life on the island is difficult. Can you look at me? Is that all okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Off you go. Do talk about it. Let me hear you talking as well. Yeah. All right, just stop for a minute, please. Just stop for a minute. Just in our conversation I've just had then. Let me help you a little bit more. Okay, just from the conversation I've just had. When we're looking at this idea of the island and how Seamus Heaney is using the language here, maybe you can think about how he is describing the landscape, first of all. How is he describing this place from a physical point of view? Another thing you could look at, this is from our conversation here, is what are the living conditions like? There's no skyscrapers here. There's no massive apartment buildings. How does he describe the living conditions? So what you could do is just have a look through and find those examples. And just one more thing. You've got three elements. You've got the landscape, the living conditions, and the actual idea of storms themselves, and how he's describing them. I hope that helps. Off you go. Can someone just give me a reaction then to the second objective? Can you describe how the poet makes life seem difficult? Yes?
It makes it seem like a war between the people and the storm.
It makes it seem like a war between the people and the storm. That's great. Has anyone got anything similar to that? Or would anyone like to comment on that? Another example then. Thank you, that was excellent. Oh, sorry, yes.
He says it's a huge nothing that we fear.
It's a huge nothing that we fear. Thank you for that. What does that mean? What does that mean? It's a huge... If it's nothing, why are we fearing it? It's a huge nothing that we fear. Go on then.
It's kind of letting you know that something's going to happen, but they can't actually do anything about it. It's a storm, like it's nature, and you won't be able to change.
And that, thank you, that's great. And that goes back to your point. It's almost like that fighting is futile, perhaps. That's great. What other? Did anyone go beyond where we've got to here? Is there any other ideas that we have? Yeah.
I think they know how to prepare for it. I think it's happened a lot in Ireland. So they're the whole poem is about them being prepared for, what they know exactly what's going to happen.
Okay, that's good. They've got a routine, perhaps. They know the storm's coming, so they know what to do to prepare for it, but they still fear it.
I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about that first activity that we saw in the middle part of the lesson. I noticed how you sort of stopped the learners in the middle of what they were doing to give them some more input. What was happening there, and why did you do that?
I had a conversation with one of the groups, and it became apparent that actually they were struggling a little bit with the task, whereas the rest of the class seemed to be okay. So I had a quick conversation, and I had to think really about how I could help that group, but also offer some support to the rest of the class as well. So I came up with those 3 points really about the landscape, living on the island, and the storm itself. And that kind of linked back into the starter as well. So offered those children who were struggling, just that help that I think that they needed.